The night reveals the stars, and the stars reveal what it is to be without them. The lack reveals the fullness, reveals what it is to be whole of heart, and empty of the transient, we can be filled with the eternal. Welcome to Ostracon, a podcast that translates fragments into the whole from which they came. Today we're talking about Sure on This Shining Night, a poem written by James Agee and set to music by Samuel Barber. We've already done an episode on Samuel Barber's Hermit Songs, which we'll link to below and includes a short biography on Samuel Barber. James Agee was a poet and journalist who was born in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1909 and died of a heart attack at a young age in New York in 1955. He was posthumously awarded the 1958 Pulitzer Prize. His works include a 1941 book, Let Us Now Praise Famous Men, about his experience living among sharecroppers in Alabama. Sure on This Shining Night comes from a 1934 collection of poems called Permit Me Voyage. Samuel Barber set the song to music as a part of his 1938 song cycle titled Four Songs. He later created an orchestral arrangement in 1938. We'll link to the text of the poem below, as well as 3 different performances of Barber's music, 1 choral, 1 soprano, and 1 baritone. Let's begin by reading the poem, and then we'll think about it together. Sure on This Shining Night. Sure on this shining night of star-made shadows round, kindness must watch for me, this side the ground. The late year lies down the north. All is healed. All is health. High summer holds the earth. Hearts are whole. Sure on this shining night, I weep for wonder, wandering far alone, of shadows on the stars. The poem expresses a great deal with a few lines, and it pulls the reader in immediately with its familiar descriptions of nature, the passing of the seasons, the sense of wander, movement, and traveling through these things, the starlit night, the light that persists in this night of wandering. And once you've heard Barber's music, I think it's fair to say it's unforgettable. There are 2 key opposites in the poem that we should begin with and then interpret from there. The first is the beginning and ending lines. It starts, sure on this shining night of star-made shadows round, and it ends, sure on this shining night I weep for wonder, wandering far alone, of shadows on the stars. The difference has to do with where the shadows fall, and that gives a different impression of where the speaker is. In the beginning, the shadows are star-made, of star-made shadows round. So, as the speaker sees the world at night, the stars are of such intense brightness that they make shadows of things on the ground. There are star-made shadows round. At the end of the poem, as the speaker weeps for wonder while wandering, the speaker describes shadows on the stars. This suggests something more like the speaker moving about the world at night and looking up at the stars, and the silhouettes of objects in black interpose themselves between the speaker and the stars, such that they make shadows, carving voids out of this brilliant starlit sky. I imagine both of these scenes in a dense wood. First, looking about the wood and seeing the shadows of the trees cast by these brilliant stars. Maybe that means looking out about the world. But then second, looking up to the stars and the trees of the wood above you silhouetting against the night sky and creating these shadows upon the stars. If you can really imagine a sky so brilliant with stars like this, you can imagine the sky being so bright that the eye adjusts to the brightness of the stars, making those interposing figures seem even darker all the way to the point of shadow. If you don't like the idea of the trees, you can also imagine the far horizon making shadows on the stars, as you sometimes see, for example, in long exposed sky photography, with the mountains surrounding the horizon in darkness and the stars above them. This idea of the horizon has interpretive appeal because in the beginning, where it is star-made shadows round, here the shadows are on the stars, but the horizon is also around, so that there is an additional contrast of being surrounded by the starlight, but then being surrounded by the horizon of shadow imposing itself upon the stars. If you've never seen the stars like this, get out into the middle of nowhere in the deserts. Get out to the middle of the Great Lakes or the sea in the middle of the night, and you'll be astounded at how bright they can be. What is the other opposite that we have to attend to? It's right in the middle of the poem. The late year lies down the north, but also high summer holds the earth. How is it at once the late year and also the high summer? And if the north, which makes one think of colder temperatures or winter, is lying down, then how does summer hold the earth? There are at least three ways that you can think of this. One, that the poem is at a single time, and it's a time when the speaker is experiencing a late summer. So even though it's late in the year, and the year lies down the north that winter and cold are coming, nonetheless, summer is hanging on. High summer continues to hold the earth, even late in the face of the coming winter. And this captures in it a sense of perseverance, of life, of healing, of health. It could also be that even though it is already late in the year, and the year already lies down the north, summer yet holds the earth because of its return. And so the summer past and the summer to come are present to the speaker, even in the middle of winter, maybe even in the middle of night and increased darkness. So the promise of the summer's return is what holds the earth. And this is why hearts are whole, that the speaker is not abandoned to the darkness and the cold, but has forever this promise. A third way that you could understand it is that the poem is not about one time, but about two times. First, when the late year lies down the north, and all is healed, all is health, the world covered in snow, and night rests and heals and recovers. And then the poem also involves a separate and different time when high summer holds the earth and hearts are whole, perhaps filled with the abundance of life and light and warmth. These options are interesting because you can make the same interpretive decision about the stars. Is the poem about a single event, this one shining night, when the speaker first looks round to the star-made shadows, and then up to the shadows on the stars? Or are these two different shining nights? One in the winter, when the speaker looks about at the shadows cast by the brilliant stars, maybe upon the blanket of snow that reflects the light of the stars and makes the night even brighter, causing those shadows to stand out. And then another shining night in the high summer, when the speaker looks up wondering and sees all the growth of the world interposed between the speaker and the light above. As I said before, this poem does a lot with a few lines. And I think we have to hold all of these possibilities together in our understanding, because across all of them and through all of them, the poem is focused on the relationship to the starry sky in the night, the relationship of the shadows and where they fall around you or before you or between us, and these movements and changes through the passage of time and the movements of seasons, the natural seasons, and how we relate to them in their healing or in their fullness, and also the seasons of life that may change if we are looking to the stars or if we are looking about at the star-made shadows. So if we can hold these possibilities and these contrasts together in our mind, let's see if we can find a meaning to this poem. It explores our relationship to heaven, or the heavens, which is the imagery used in the poem, as the stars. Look at this interrelationship. The stars make the shadows. It's the light from the stars that cast the shadows around the narrator. In the same way that there must be a presence to have a lack of that presence, in the way that there must be a positive reality in order to feel its absence. The shadows are there because the stars are there, and something has been interposed in the star's light. And even when those shadows interpose between the view of the speaker and the stars themselves, even when the speaker is looking up and the shadows or the silhouettes are blocking the speaker's view of the light, still those are there because the stars are there. Also note that while we are in the night, it is the night that makes the stars visible. They can't be seen when the sun is high, or perhaps when high summer holds the earth. And so as we wander through life, like the speaker, we find ourselves in night, but we find what the night reveals, and we find all the things that surround us are in relation to that revelation. It is even the reason why the shadows are there. And we do this through all seasons of time and of life. As night reveals the stars, and then shadows exist where the light is blocked, so with the opposing seasons, the healing in quiet, in silence, in night, in winter, in stillness, and the fullness of summer. These relate to one another. We have to heal to be full. Then we must reflect on fullness so that it directs us upward instead of earthward. And we see this movement, maybe even a cyclical movement, in the poem, where the second half of the poem reflects the fullness of summer, where the speaker is surrounded by earthly things. It is those surrounding things that make the shadows interposed upon the stars, and they block the stars. And notice how the summer is said to hold the earth, not only in the positive sense that promise of the returning summer, the renewal of life, the constant phases of renewal in our lives, not only that promise is out there in the winter, but then also that the summer holds the earth like perhaps if we live only in the summer, then we hold on to the earth. We become desirous of the earth alone, satisfied with the earth alone. And perhaps this is the shadows upon the stars that block the light. It is in the first half of the poem, where the late year lies down the north, that the stars are revealed in the lengthening nights, and then this reveals the shadows that surround the speaker. In fact, it reveals that the things of the earth make these shadows when they block the stars. And so rather than the shadows being imposed on the stars and blocking them, the speaker sees the stars and how the things of earth make shadows. Again, the paradox that it is in the night that we find the stars, and then from the stars we find the relationship of all else to their revelation. And so, like the light and dark, the poem reveals to us the relationship between fullness and emptiness. We are at times filled with life, but we cannot be so filled that it is to the point of distraction from eternal truths, cannot be so healthy and so safe that we falsely feel invincible. There must also be winter and lack in order to see the heavens. And so even though you could read this poem in different ways, is there one night? Are there two nights? Are these two nights in separate seasons? Or in this one night, are these opposing seasons held in tension with one another? These readings are equally valid because they all make the same point. They're all part of this one reality expressed by the poem, that we must find these heavens as we move through the seasons. And that is why the poet asks, in a line we haven't yet addressed, that kindness must watch for me this side the ground. In other words, the living side of the ground, where we are not in the grave and moving about the world. In life, we must be sustained by the good, so that it is not obscured from us when we go through different and difficult seasons. Rather, if we are sustained by the good, then it may be in the difficult seasons, in the seasons of aloneness, that we see more and more what the good is. And this is why we ask for that sustaining kindness. And like the speaker, we must weep for wonder as we wander through these nights and skies and seasons. Even though the poem has this bittersweet flavor, we should not despair that it ends with the speaker having shadows upon the stars. It is in the aloneness, in the night, maybe even in the obscuring, that the speaker realizes what it is when hearts are whole, that the heavens become more real and visible by the contrast of knowing that he is not whole, but that wholeness exists and is real where the light is not obscured. And why does the speaker weep? What is sustaining? It is the wonder. We are to be fed by this beauty to sustain us. And it is in the sustaining that we see more of the beauty. And this is why the poem strikes that strange mingling of being melancholic but not hopeless, a mixture that is expressed transcendently in Barber's composition and the feeling of the music. The night reveals the stars, and the stars reveal what it is to be without them. The lack reveals the fullness, reveals what it is to be whole of heart, and empty of the transient, we can be filled with the eternal. These relationships that we've uncovered here remind me of two parts of Scripture. The first one is where the prophet Elijah is fleeing the place where he was because his life is in danger, and he's trying to go as far away as possible. That's when he lays down under a broom tree, wishing to die. He's so weak and exhausted. And an angel appears to him with food and says, "Eat, or the journey will be too long." And he does eat. And that's when he goes into a cave, into the stillness. And you may remember that he hears an earthquake and a storm and all of these powerful natural things, but God is not in them. And then he hears the tiny whisper, and he knows that it is the voice of God. And what does he do? He returns. He returns to the very place that he was fleeing. He has been sustained. He has gone into the cave and heard, beyond all the tumult of nature, the truth in the silent voice. He's received what was fed to him, and he goes back. It also makes me think of Psalm 139, which speaks expressly about the relationship between light and dark and their cooperation in revelation. It says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your face? If I climb the heavens, you are there. If I lie in the grave, you are there. If I take the wings of the dawn, or dwell at the sea's furthest end, even there your hand would lead me, your right hand would hold me fast. If I say, let the darkness hide me, and the light around me be night, even darkness is not dark to you. The night shall be as bright as day, and darkness the same as the light."